Welcome to All In, a straight-shooting, science-based podcast about periods, fertility, and nurturing health outside of unrealistic beauty expectations. We will mostly, but not exclusively, focus on hypothalamic amenorrhea, HA, a component of the female athlete triad, and relative energy deficiency in sport.
I'm Dr. Nicola Rinaldi, scientist and lead author of the book No Period, Now What? I specialize in helping people understand how their eating, exercise, and lifestyle habits are keeping them from hormonal health and their best life. My work focuses on regaining periods, improving fertility, and breaking free of the rules of underlying diet culture.
My name is Florence Gillet. I'm a certified eating psychology coach and the founder of BeyondBodyImage.com. I specialize in mental recovery, helping people let go of toxic health beliefs to finally feel at ease in their bodies at any size.
Every 2 weeks, the All In podcast brings you real recovery stories, expert insights, and new scientific research on HA, hormonal health, and fertility, with an unmissable touch of body respect and women's empowerment.
Just a reminder that this podcast represents the opinions of the hosts and their guests. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. It is for informational purposes only. And because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Music by the Andy Shulman Band, available on Spotify.
Welcome to the first real episode of our podcast, All In. In each episode, Florence and I will talk a little bit about how we've been all in that week in our personal lives, in our professional lives, whatever's on our mind. So Florence, why don't you tell us how you've been all in this week?
So, as we said, right, All In was way beyond just eating well and resting and not exercising if you didn't feel like it. It's also really honoring yourself. I was very lucky this week. I was actually on a staycation. COVID-19 didn't allow me to go back to my home country. I live in Dubai, for those who don't know. So I'm an expat in Dubai. And it was impossible for me to travel this summer, which I usually do, because Dubai is crazy hot in the summer. But we went on staycation and, it made me realize once again how free I feel being in the body that I am and eating all the foods that are delicious, right? When you're on holiday, you're constantly facing delicious foods and everything is served to you. You don't have to prepare anything.
Sounds divine.
Exactly. And, 10 years ago, I would have tried to micromanage how much do I eat and how do I look? And oh my God, now I'm bloated. I can't put my swimsuit on, or I should put this swimsuit that hides the bloat, or, this whole conversation that's going on in your head and just takes all your mental space. And, I realized once again, I have none of that. I just put on my swimsuit and we were in a hotel that has a water park attached to it. So obviously we went to the water park with the kids every day and they don't care, like
No, they
whether
really
you're
don't.
bloated or not, whether your swimsuit is fitting you or not. Nobody cares. All they want is to go on the slides with you and enjoy with you and be a bit scared or, be happy. And so I guess, honoring myself on holiday, also just making sure I eat all the delicious foods and I allow for this to happen and I'm free in my head to be really close and connected to my family. That's how I'm all in this week. Yeah. What about you?
So my story is actually quite similar. I took my 3 boys up to New Hampshire this week to see the Perseids meteor shower. We have, where I live, just outside of Boston in the US, we're fairly urban, so too many lights to see any stars really. So we drove north for an hour and a half. We camped out for the night. We ate s'mores, which if anyone is outside of the US, it's you roast marshmallows, you put them with chocolate and graham crackers, and it's this amazing concoction that is so worth trying if you haven't tried it before. We ate s'mores. We had just sandwiches for dinner. I didn't want to be married to spending hours cooking, so I just packed easy stuff and we ate dinner. We laid out our blankets. We stared at the stars for 3 hours. It was incredible. I never thought the kids would have that kind of attention span, but we saw about 25 or 30 meteors. And It was just a lovely bonding experience and something that I've wanted to share with the kids for a long time and I keep forgetting. So it was really exciting to actually take them up and be there and be with them. And similar to you, like I just really was present with my kids. And I feel like that's a really important part of being all in, is spending the time with the people you're with instead of thinking about your food or your exercise or any of that. So it was lovely.
So true. So true. So every episode will have a little bit of a check on how we are all in. And I think it's going to be a question for our guests as well.
Yes.
So now let's jump right in to the first episode. And in this episode, we tell you more about each of our journeys and, where we got to where we are today. Nicola, most of us with HA got the condition from a combination of underfueling and over-exercising in an attempt to control our physical appearance. How did this play out in your life?
Really, exactly that. I mean, I was in graduate school and I was exercising a lot because my husband was a consultant, so he was away. And so I had a lot of free time after lab work was done or, on the weekends. So I was doing a lot of exercise because I enjoyed it. I was playing ice hockey and volleyball and squash and lifting weights and just really loving moving my body. And then a bunch of the people in my lab decided they wanted to go on a diet. And I know. In hindsight, I mean, just...
No!
Exactly. So I cut my calories to a ridiculous level for the amount of exercise that I was doing. I had physical goals. I wanted to have 6-pack abs. I wanted to be able to see the vein running down my biceps, all super important. I also wanted to get pregnant in the not too distant future, not realizing that those goals were not exactly compatible. I lost a bunch of weight in a very short amount of time and then went off the pill to try and get pregnant, and I had no period. In hindsight, it makes perfect sense. This is what my body did, because why would it want to sustain another life when I wasn't providing enough nutrients and nourishment to sustain myself? But at the time, I didn't know any better, and there was really no information about HA or amenorrhea out in the public sphere at all. I mean, I searched for stuff online. It was the earlier days of the internet, so there was not much out there, and so I didn't have any guidance as to where to go from there.
But were you diagnosed officially by your doctor? Like, what did the doctor say at that time?
Yeah, so I was eventually diagnosed. I started with my OBGYN, and she said what a lot of doctors say, which is, oh, well, maybe you could eat a little bit more and maybe you could cut your exercise, but didn't give me any guidelines. So I did that. I ate a little bit more and I cut my exercise a little bit, and still no period. And eventually, going down the diagnostic path, she did a bunch of different tests and eventually told me that in consultation with a reproductive endocrinologist, she figured out that I probably had HA. And so that then did lead me down the path to seeing a reproductive endocrinologist, because I was interested in getting pregnant. So how about you? How did the underfueling and overexercise manifest in your life?
So I just realized that you were saying, like, my husband was quite busy. I was on my own a little bit more than usual. And so I had to find some sort of hobby, I guess. And I decided I'm going to have the perfect body. Well, it's funny because for me, it's I think the first thing I would say is I have the personality that is really perfect for that type of disordered eating and orthorexia and all of that. So a bit of a perfectionist, very A-type, planning all the time, has to plan everything. But I think none of that really manifested for me until I moved away from my home country. So I was born in Brussels and stayed there until I was 25. At 25, I followed my then fiance, who's now my husband, and we went to London. And same, he worked crazy hours. And so I spent a lot of time on my own. I didn't know many people yet in London. I was working there, but do you really want to socialize with your colleagues all the time? Not really. So I ended up working out more. And for some reason, I had read about, the calories and counting your calories. And extra trigger, I was getting married that year.
Oh, yeah.
And I had ordered my dress a year in advance. And for some reason, I literally obsessed over, I have to fit in that dress. I cannot change. And why would my body change in the first place? If I eat normally, my body doesn't really change that much. But for some reason, diet culture being all around me, I was a big fan of women's magazines as well. Big mistake. I kept reading about, you need to eat less and exercise more.
It's so common.
If you're hungry, have a big glass of water. It might be thirst. And you're like, no, if you're hungry, you eat.
Yes.
And so I made the mistake of starting counting calories and reducing them. And obviously my workouts stayed the same. I was running at the time. I've never been an athlete. I'm still not. But I was running and, just maybe 3 times a week was enough for me, considering the underfueling I was also doing. And I kept that going for years, actually, because I was on birth control. And so I didn't know that anything was up. I literally had my period, quote unquote, because we will discuss this later, but birth control pills are not real periods.
Correct.
They do not give you real periods. So I didn't really pay attention to it for probably 3-4 years until I came off the birth control pill in hope to conceive. And I was like you, I was so delusional, thinking, I am so healthy. I've never been as thin as I am today, so I will be conceiving this baby just like that.
Yes.
But the reality is I had no more fat on my body, and I'm naturally long and lean. I don't even know why I was thinking I needed to change in the first place. It's just ridiculous. And so, once I came off birth control, I was diagnosed with HA quite fast. There were questions about, is it PCOS and all of that? Because also I had acne, which I still have today, but we can have a whole discussion about that later. And at the time, my gynecologist was charming to tell me, well, you have 2 choices. Either you want to have a baby and you go the IVF route, either you don't want to have a baby and we put you on birth control and you have periods. It's all very well and easy. And I was like, surely I'm a 28-year-old woman. There must be a better way to do this. So, and as you said, there was very little information out there. Even, my doctor never thought that my weight was an issue. I was on the lower side of normal. But so she never even asked me, how much do you exercise? How much do you eat? Do you eat everything? Do you have dessert? Never, no one ever asked me that. They put me through millions of tests. And then basically to tell me just, we don't know what to do with you. And so what happened to you at that time as you were looking and nothing was out there?
So I started my own blog because I came across a sort of blogging world of people who were infertile and blogging about it. And I was like, well, that's me. I can't get pregnant and I have no idea what to do. So I kind of joined this community, which was really amazing. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about HA recovery now is that there are some really great communities, and the support that you get from other people going through the same thing. At the time it was infertility, but still having people kind of cheering me on was so helpful. And I think that that's really one of the great things about the what we've built on Facebook and other places. So I, again, didn't really know what I was doing. So I once I started seeing the reproductive endocrinologist, I ended up going down the path of doing injections to try and get pregnant. They told me I had one period after finding out that I had HA. We went on vacation to South Africa, which is where I'm originally from. And so that was 3 weeks of, eating everything, not doing my normal exercise of ice hockey, etc. So I did actually get a period then. But I came back to Boston and had some doctor's appointments. They did some tests. They did an ultrasound. Like, you have a follicle. I was so excited. I have a follicle growing. This is amazing. And then I had another ultrasound 2 days later, and they're like, oh, it hasn't grown. So we're just going to do injections because, nothing's ever going to happen on its own. Like, knowing what I know now, I wish I had just waited another week because I think that's all I needed. But anyway, I didn't know then what I know now. So I did 4 cycles.
Hindsight is a beautiful thing, right? Yeah.
So I did 4 cycles of injectables, which all failed, various challenges in terms of, ovulating early, too many follicles, taking too long, all sorts of mess ups. So after the 4th failed one, which was also at the same time as my sister got pregnant, we were supposed to be pregnant together. She got tired of waiting for me. So that was really hard. We decided to move forward with IVF and just had to wait a couple months for insurance purposes. And my doctor wanted to put me on birth control pills. And I was like, I would like to be pregnant. So why would I go on birth control pills right now? Like, this makes no sense. So I didn't. And I got an ovulation predictor computer thing, started using it every day. And I wasn't expecting anything to happen at all. But cycle day 42, I got a positive on the OPKs, and I went to my little bloggy friends and I was like, did I miss it because my temperature went up? And they're like, no, go for it. So, we had sex, and 12 days later, I got a positive pregnancy test.
Ta-da!
Yeah, so that was sort of my journey from there. And then when I was pregnant, I was actually put on modified bed rest because I was having Braxton Hicks contractions like all the time. I mean, every 2 to 3 minutes, I was hospitalized for a few days, lots of stuff. So they're like, you can go to work, but don't do anything more than that. So I ended up connecting with somebody through the blog world, but she told me about the Fertile Thoughts board. Mm-hmm. And so I joined that, and it was great. It gave me something to do that was not exercise. And, that's where I met a whole group of women who also had HA, and I kind of joined and shared my experience and my knowledge and everything I'd learned so far. Just got to know these amazing women, still in touch with many of them, like you. We have a little Facebook group that, there are about 200 of us who are still in there. And these are all the women that took the survey for my book.
Yeah.
So that's sort of when the book kind of got started. I was going to say, how about you? What were your next steps after you kind of found out you had HA, and how did you find the board and everything?
It was your blog.
Okay.
It was your blog. Yeah. I looked everywhere and nobody had information. I think also information in French is still non-existent to this day, which is crazy because we're talking about a decade ago. So I'm very lucky that I was able to read and understand English perfectly, that I could research in English. And I came... Basically, I came to find your blog at the time, No Period Baby. I definitely remember it. And I was like, oh my God, who is this person who managed to get a baby naturally? And what did she do? I need to do this. And then at the time, you redirected me to the board. So this online forum. I had never taken part in an online forum before. I was like, do I need to be concerned? I don't know these people. Shall I share my most intimate life with them? But then, it was actually quite secure because, you had to really kind of go through logging in and creating a whole profile, and nobody could read those messages unless they were part of the group. And same as you, I read for a very long time. I didn't feel ready to exchange or speak about my own experience, but I read
Mm-hmm.
thousands and thousands of pages of stories, right? And women trying to recover their cycle, and a lot of trial and error, if you
Yeah.
think about it at
Yeah.
that time. And I think for many of us on the forum, you were really a beacon of light, Nicola, because you already had extensive knowledge of the situation. And I think you have this amazing scientific brain that allows you also to kind of not only look at the stories, but really kind of make them more part of a bigger framework, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding, okay, well, if this person tried this medication and it worked, but that person, you kind of managed to put it in a much more understandable, automatic way, I would say, which I'm not a scientist, as you can tell. But so I found that, a lot of the knowledge that you had was really very present on that forum. And somehow, we were the first few women that benefited from your knowledge well before the book, well
Mm-hmm.
before it was formalized, but your knowledge was already there. And I know you were not working on this full time and you had all the other things to deal with at the time. You already had two boys, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you were also a young mother and very busy and working full time. But you were very present for all of us. And I'm so fortunate that I came across that board. It did take me 9 months to get all in.
Uh-huh.
I was in deep denial for a very, very long time. I couldn't give up on my perfect body, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
But then at some point, I think I realized I was like, I got to try it. I
Yeah.
got to try it. I would not feel confident going straight into IVF if I don't try this method that they're talking about. And it was ridden with anxiety. Ridden? Do we say
Mm-hmm.
ridden with anxiety?
Yes. Yep.
Ridden with anxiety that I went all in, but then obviously very happy with the result. I would say that I never looked back. It's not true. I did not ever look back, but we can talk about this
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
But it was essentially thanks to you and that forum at the time, which acted a little bit like the Facebook group today.
Yeah. So you've actually answered our next question, which was, did you go all in immediately? And if not, at what point were you ready? What triggered it? So was there a particular thing that triggered you to be like, okay, I'm really going to do this? Or was it more of an ongoing process that happened?
I think it's a bit of an ongoing process, but I remember the day that I said to my husband, I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try it. And I would be so disappointed if I don't try, right? If I don't give that method a go. At the time, actually, we were going for a trip to the Maldives. It was a
Mm-hmm.
very nice trip. And so I felt also like it was easier, a bit like you said about South Africa. It would have been
Yeah.
easier for
Yeah.
me to kind of go all in, like really let go of everything and eat all the foods and enjoy myself in an environment that was not maybe my daily environment, where I had the rules and the stuff that I used to follow. And so it was November 2009, really long time ago. I feel like a dinosaur when I say this. Um, but yeah, and that's the thing that I share with many clients as well. I tell them, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's normal that you feel scared to go all in. It's normal that it takes time to take the jump, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But as with anything else, like, getting over that fear is usually what opens door, right? And as you know, lots of Instagram accounts share also the kind of, growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone and that type of stuff. So
Yep.
but yeah, so I mean, for you, I mean, I know it's hasn't really been like a decision to go all in because you're the one who discovered it in the first place. But did you feel like you were kind of clicking in a way that the South Africa trip and the way that you were acting there actually played a role?
So I didn't really put two and two together about that for quite a long time. So when I got back and we were doing the injections, I did actually go back to my exercise, which is probably why I had so much trouble because I was still playing
Yeah.
ice hockey, not nearly as much as I had been in the past. I went from
Yeah.
multiple activities in a day down to one and some rest days. So I wasn't playing
Mhm.
nearly as much, but ice hockey is a very intense sport. So I think that may very well have had to do with why I wasn't responding very well to the injections.
Mhm.
And of course, none of the doctors ever said to me, what are you doing for exercise? Maybe that's too much. So I think my recovery was much more gradual. It was very slowly letting go of the control over my eating. I sort
Yeah.
of I, I added calories to start with. I was still tracking everything in my Excel file. This was well before my Fitness Pal. But I just so I started by increasing my target and being quite rigid with that still. And then I just sort of got tired of it and I
Mm.
stopped tracking on a regular basis. I would still track occasionally. I would not track my snacks maybe. And then I just like throw up my hands like, this is ridiculous. Why am I even bothering? So in that sense, I was absolutely all in. I gained back all the weight I had lost and then some. And that's actually fairly common with HA recovery is when we've had this period of sort of marked intense weight loss due to restriction that
Yeah.
it takes getting back to where you started, which is typically where your body's actually happy,
Yeah.
because it's a weight that was natural for you beforehand, and it's just, you just eat, and so that's kind of where I got back to.
Yeah.
And I never did cut out my high intensity exercise completely. So in some ways, I was quite lucky that I was able to ovulate while continuing to do that because many women can't. But I think it had very much become, exercise for me was never really about controlling my body. That was the food side of things much more. So I
Yeah.
was doing the exercise because I enjoyed it. I
Mhm.
love ice hockey. It really soothes my soul. It's just, it's fun. It's enjoyable. I love the competition and all of that.
Which
Um,
is interesting to note for people listening to us and being in that process and struggling with letting go of exercise because this is something they enjoy or this is something that helps them mentally, or because we see this a lot, right, where they say like, I do this for mental health, it helps me
yeah,
so much. And is that you will go back like today, Nicola, you're still playing hockey,
I still play ice hockey.
you
Not
still
nearly as
enjoy
much.
the sport.
Not nearly as much with COVID, but we have started playing. We're doing socially distant hockey at the moment.
How is that even possible? Okay, we'll have to have another episode on socially distancing while playing ice hockey. I don't know how it's possible. But just, I think it's really, really essential for women to understand and for anyone willing to get their periods back, is that it's really just a temporary matter to go all in and really fuel and really rest and allow for that to happen, but that they will be able to exercise again. They will be able to find enjoyment in it, but they will learn how to deal with fueling properly, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really important point that there's sort of two aspects to all in. There's the fueling, the eating, the nourishment part, and there's the exercise part. The fueling and nourishment never goes away. That remains important for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And if you maintain that and you eat to fuel your exercise and your body and everything your body needs, then you can go and do, a lot of things in terms of high intensity exercise, whatever you're enjoying.
Right.
I always encourage people not to get obsessive about the exercise. Realize
Mm-hmm.
that rest days are important. And if you're not able to exercise for whatever reason, it is not the end of the world. You're not going to magically lose all of your fitness in one day and turn into a blob of jelly. Like that does not actually happen.
True.
But really fueling your body for the rest of your life is the most important part about sort of the maintenance of all in. So
Yeah. And I would add a third part for recovery. I agree that obviously, fueling properly with food and having an exercise routine that also allows you to listen to your own body cues, right? When you're really tired, when you didn't have time, when you're rushing, it's just probably not the best time to go and exercise. But there's obviously also the mental side of it, right?
Yes.
And to me, it's this idea that if I stop exercising, I'm going to turn into a blob like instantly. It's very much an idea coming from diet culture, right?
Totally. Totally.
It's this black or white, right? If
Mm-hmm.
I let go of my routine even an inch, I'm going to turn into this massive blob that's unable to move and has no energy and has diseases. And this is the fear mongering that diet culture puts in us, right? And I think it's important in recovery to really dismantle that. So this is something that for me, my all-in process, I was determined to have a baby. And you were saying like, oh, what got you into deciding to go all in? It was definitely the wish to become a mother that, pushed me to that and said like, I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to hate every minute of it, but I'm going to do it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do it
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to be worth it. And I need to try at least this way before I can go on to other ways, because it's possible that you still need the fertility
Yeah,
treatment,
it
and there's no
is.
shame in that. I was not at all shaming myself for that. But the reality is, at the time I went all in, I worked on fueling myself with food, reducing my exercise, reducing the stress, resting more. But I never actually did the mental health
Mm-hmm.
part,
Mm-hmm.
where I was actually dismantling, why do I need to be in this perfect body in the first place? And I think if people listening to us can also include that in their path, in their journey, it's actually going to be a lot of time spared
Yes.
after recovery, even where they are going back to having a normal cycle and trying to reintroduce exercise and trying to understand how best they feel, what they should eat to feel great in their bodies. It's also to really look at, why do I need to focus so much on my appearance in the first place, right? But yeah, sorry, I've digressed a little bit.
I
But
think that's
anyway,
the fun part about doing our own podcast is we can totally do
right.
that.
So I think what else I wanted to ask you? Yeah, some of the kind of challenges and rewards of recovery, like what you went through, and going to seeing what your goals were, because you also tried to have a baby at the time.
Yeah, I think for me it was also very pregnancy focused, and I know that for people working on recovery with who are not interested in getting pregnant, it can be a lot more challenging. But I do
Yeah.
think that really understanding the health implications of HA, which I was completely unaware of at the time,
Yeah.
and the long-term implications, short and long-term, can be really good motivators, even if you don't want to get pregnant.
So remind us of those, please.
Well, so I mean, the here and now things are, having to pee all the time, having, hair falling out, brittle nails, feeling cold all the time, anxious, you know, no interest in physical pleasure, shall we say? um, uh, no vaginal lubrication. There's so much that our body needs energy for, and when we're not providing it, it has to shut things down, and it takes away so much of the enjoyment of life. You even find that you can't think as well, and you don't. Your brain kind of spirals into these cycles of negativity and cycles of focusing on food and exercise and body to the exclusion of everything else. And there's so much more that's enjoyable about life than thinking about food, exercise, body all the time. Like seeing meteors with your kids. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think something also that I was totally oblivious to at the time, but that I know now as a coach is that, my own relationship with my body and food and exercise will influence my children's relationship with their own bodies and food and exercise. So
Absolutely.
um, I mean, that's something fascinating. Now, I think, as you said, like if pregnancy is not an objective for some of you listening to us, there are still a lot of positives in recovering and going back to having a normal cycle. And I think the long term kind of goals are also really positive in the sense of having better bone health,
Yep.
protecting your brain, protecting your heart. I think, again, it's a side effect of diet culture that we kind of always put thinness on a pedestal, right? And we think thinness is everything. If I have thinness, I have success and happiness and health. But the reality is it's not that simple.
It's really
And
not.
where it's very individual, and for some of us, health will mean that we are maybe in the normal range. What is normal, right? You can always wonder. There are so much research out there that's showing more and more that people can be in a larger body and actually have better longevity and better health outcomes than people in a smaller body. And then we have to think also it's the whole environment, where you live, where you come from, like, how many discriminations you've been a victim of. I think we kind of oversimplify the happiness is thinness thing. It's just
So
completely
much.
random.
So much.
Yeah. So what else did we not talk about? Maybe kind of proper recovery process. So in my case, there was no mental health work done at that time. So I had to actually go through a relapse a few years after that, unfortunately. And that's why I'm a big, big advocate of supporting people that are going through this process and really working on their body image as well and supporting their mental health in that process. But my recovery process was still pretty good in the sense that, I went all in for 5 months. And then I had my first recovery period, was very happy about it. But then again, like thinking it would take a lot longer to conceive after that and that I would maybe need medication or, I was really not too hopeful that it would happen. But then I conceived my first child on my second ovulation. There you go. And it
Yeah.
was a longer cycle. It was like I ovulated on day 28, which, is supposedly the day that you have your period. I had a perfect baby, a very healthy baby, very healthy pregnancy. I didn't need any more support after that. And so obviously I still recall, the year that all of this happened, me going all in, getting my period back, getting pregnant super easily. This is probably the best year of my life. And I think it will remain that way, having your baby. And it's just, it felt like such a complete transformation. And at that time, I have to say, becoming a mother, it did take my mind off my body for a little while, because obviously your body is not really yours. You share it with the baby and you
Yeah.
want the best for baby. So you're not really thinking too much about your size or anything. And then, I think pregnancy also allows you to be as wide and large and taking space as you need.
Well, I mean, I think there are a lot of women who do find that pregnancy is challenging because they have
True.
this ideal, like you can only have this little basketball sized bump and that's it. You can't gain weight anywhere else. So I think that's certainly another topic for us to explore.
Yes.
As well as postpartum, the idea of having to get your, quote unquote, getting your body back and what that entails,
True.
which often can lead people to HA even if they didn't have it before pregnancy. So, this idea of not fueling your body properly. So, especially when you're nursing, because that takes a huge amount of energy.
True.
And then, jumping back into exercise ASAP, all for the point of not looking like you had a baby. So I think that's certainly another topic that we can explore because I think that is a time of
Absolutely.
challenge for a lot of
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah, I think also for me going in pregnancy with the HA recovery, just so close, I think it was easier for me to really let go and to say like, I'm
Yes.
going to really feed that child and it doesn't matter like where I get, because obviously you have to imagine, right? I had gained weight during the all-in process and then I gained the pregnancy weight. So in a year, I literally gained, more weight than in any other time in my life. But the beauty of it is I really didn't think about it, but you're right. It's definitely a topic that I know a lot of women are thinking about, and it's important to remind this. But yeah, so for me, that was it. I had my child. I had another child on the back of that very quickly. I
Yes,
didn't
you did.
realize that you are very fertile after your first child. So if you think, oh, it took me a while to conceive the first one, I don't really need birth control. You probably do need birth control. But no regrets. I'm very lucky to
Yes.
have the two. And but again, not doing the mental work of accepting my body wherever it's going to be, whatever it's going to look like, as long as I fuel it and take care of it and honor it, is something that caught me into trouble later on. But we can probably talk about that on another episode.
Yeah. Yeah. One more question for you. So how did you get into the work that you're doing now?
Yes. Well, okay, then I'm going to cover it. I'm going to cover it. So when my kids were 2 and 3, I went back to work full time, and I was working in PR and communications in the luxury sector.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I used to love that job. There's really nothing wrong with it, but it was very much based on appearance. I was representing a brand and I was supposed to always look perfect and have the right clothes, the right hairstyle, the nails perfectly done and all of that. And so going back after, both pregnancies and taking care of my babies for a while, and I was freelancing while they were small, so there was not that much pressure on how I looked. Going back into that environment, I felt like triggered, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was also a lot of anxiety about dealing with 2 young children, working full time, my husband working a lot, traveling a lot. I was constantly kind of trying to manage everything. And I think, because I had not done this mental health work of recovery and actually using good ways to deal with my anxiety, safe ways to deal with my anxiety. What did I do to deal with my anxiety? What was my coping mechanism? What do you think, Nico?
I'm guessing running and underfueling.
Dieting, right?
Yeah.
Dieting. So I knew not to count my calories by that time. I knew that counting calories and reducing the amount that you eat is not good. I didn't want to go back to HA, but I was diagnosed after my pregnancies with not one, but 2 autoimmune diseases.
Mm.
And I fell for what I call now, quote unquote, the wellness diet.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not dieting for weight. I was dieting for health.
Mm-hmm.
It was my badge of honor. And so I really, started restricting foods because I had read that, if you have autoimmune diseases, you shouldn't have this and you shouldn't have that. And this is really causing inflammation in your body. And, and I think this is a narrative a lot of women still today
Mm-hmm.
come to the group with, where they say, I'm not doing this for weight, but I can't have this and I have to be a vegan and I have to, So my drug of choice at the time was paleo. Paleo was very
Mm-hmm.
big at that time. And so I slowly reduced the food groups that I was eating from. And I made the mistake about a year into that, into doing it on my own. I made the mistake to go see a naturopath, and she pushed me further down that rabbit hole because she made the food intolerance testing,
Mm-hmm.
which we know now is completely bogus, doesn't say anything about your intolerances. But she diagnosed me at the time to say that I had like 40 plus intolerances.
Oh my gosh.
And a lot of the stuff that, I was eating was diagnosed as intolerant, which I know now, like when you do that test, it shows how tolerant you are to
Mm-hmm.
these foods, not intolerant. It's just completely random. And I paid lots of money for this. But anyway, that's a whole different story. So it pushed me further down, and I didn't fully lose my period. I think it's a bit like Stephanie Buttermore, right? I didn't go back into proper HA, where I wasn't responding to Provera or anything like that. But my cycles became longer. I was cold. I was anxious. I was irritable. I didn't want to have sex at any time of the day. I was like, no libido. And, at the time also, on top of the autoimmune diseases, I was trying to manage acne, which is something that I have had for pretty much my whole adult life. And obviously, while on the diet, it was actually getting worse because I was under fueling. And so my hormones were all over the place, which makes your acne worse. So it just came to a head at some point. Like, a lot of stuff happened in my personal and professional life. I lost my job, the company closed, and I had to really take the time to think, what am I doing? What is this really doing? And then my kid made a comment. My youngest child, who was 4, one day we went to McDonald's and I had a bit of an effort attitude where I was like, oh, I'm going to have a burger. And she said, Mommy, you're eating like us? And that, Nicola, it petrified me. I was like, she is 4 and she understood that I am dieting, that this is what women do, that this is what mothers have to do. And I think all of this created the perfect storm. And I was like, I gotta change what is going on. I started therapy and I worked with a body image coach. And years down the line, this is why I went into body image coaching as well. I felt like lots of women can recover physically, but if they don't address their anxiety, their perfectionism, the way they put all their worth in their appearance, they will relapse for sure.
Yeah.
They were, something is going to come, a little grain of sand in the system, and it's going to go straight back to dieting and restricting and over exercising. So yeah, sorry, it's a bit long, but this is how I got there.
That's great.
What about you? What happened between the whole, I've had children, I start, exchanging on the forum and helping all these women, and where did you go from there?
So the forum really became a passion of mine, and that was basically what I was doing in all my free time. So I would get home from my job and then go online and hang out with all these people that I had met, and read and respond to all of the posts. And it made me really happy. It was like feeding my soul, and so I just kept doing it. And through my 2 kids. And then I realized that there just wasn't enough accurate information out there. And so people were telling me, so much, you should write a book. And I was like, yeah, I will, because I have all of this knowledge to share and I want to get it out there. So I did a survey of 330 women that had been through the HA board. I, contacted everybody and got an amazing response rate, which I think again speaks to the community of women and how much they want to help others who are following in their footsteps. So I did the survey. That took me about a year. This was after my 3rd son was born, and I decided I cannot do 3 children and working. It was like working outside of the home. It was just not feasible for me. I know people do it, but I was lucky enough to be able to stay home. So when my youngest was napping, I would work on book stuff. When he was sleeping at night, I worked every night from 9 p.m. until 2 a.m. That was like my work time. My husband did all the dishes and I cranked things out. So I did a lot of reading and research and, really formalized the definitions around all-in. I ended up having 2 co-authors, Stephanie Buckler and Lisa Waddell, and it was a little bit random how that happened. So when I sent out the survey, Stephanie responded to me saying, I've been thinking about writing a book as well. I'm a motivational speaker, recovered from an eating disorder. Would you be interested in collaborating? And I was like, maybe, whatever. I just didn't respond for a while. And then a few days later, she wrote back saying, I guess you're not interested. And I was like, no, wait, let's talk. And the amazing thing is, it turned out we lived right next door to each other, like 1 town away from each other. I mean, like no idea. So it just kind of felt like a match made in heaven. So we started working together, and then Lisa had actually joined the board as well by that time, and she was amazing on the board. She was very straight shooter, telling it like it is, you know. So it seemed like we really complemented each other there, and I wanted to bring a little bit of that into the book as well. So we ended up having her join us, and so the three of us collaborated. It took 3.5 years all told to put the book together, from the survey, the research, the writing. It was about a year's worth of editing that we collaborated on, and we pulled in some other women from the board. So my friend Claire Garrity, who did like all the copy editing, a couple of other women, Deanna and Katrina, who helped with content editing. So it was this collaborative thing, and it was just Mallory Blondin did the cover art, which I love. She gave me a bunch of different choices, and that one was the one that really spoke to us. And so decided to self-publish because I didn't want to deal with spending years trying to find an agent and a publisher for what's really a niche book. I mean, it's not something that I could envision, a random house being interested in. So, I learned about self-publishing and went ahead and did that. And it's amazing how easy it is to publish on Amazon. You just upload a PDF and boom, they'll print your book for you. So,
Wow.
Living when we do, I mean, even 10 years before it would have been so much harder, but it was a really easy process. And so that's kind of where the book came from. And then once it was done, I was a little bit at a loss for what to do. Yeah. So I actually went back to work as a project manager at MIT for a guy that I had known when I was doing my graduate work. But it turned out it was not my favorite job. And I found so much more joy in the Facebook support groups and working with women. I had started doing a little bit of working with women one-on-one. If they emailed me and like, do you have questions? So I would just do that. And so I decided to quit my MIT job and hang out my shingle as a wellness consultant, and helping people sort of understand where their HA is coming from, understand their diagnosis, because again, as we mentioned earlier, or maybe it was in our previous segment, there's a lot of misdiagnosis or misunderstanding of the factors that are involved in HA. So really just helping people to look at their own life and understand what things they might want to think about changing to not only recover their periods, but also, as we've been talking about, to recover their lives and their joy, and get away from this idea that you have to focus all the time on eating clean and healthy and being in this specifically prescribed body that actually is not terribly healthy. So that's been almost 2 years now that I've been doing this work, and it feeds, like I said before, it feeds my soul. It makes me so happy to really help people recover their periods, their joy, get pregnant, all of that. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
That's definitely also, I think we really come together in that, right? And it's funny because we started very much on our own, like our small businesses, one-person business at the same time, pretty much, right?
Yep.
Because for me too, like once I went through all the therapy and the recovery and did all the work on myself, I tried to go back to my former job, finding a job in the same sector. And I had a few offers. And one of them, for example, was for a beauty brand. But then I realized I just can't, because I don't believe in it anymore. I don't believe that I need all that stuff. I don't believe that anyone needs all of that stuff. You know what I mean? So at the time, I was very fortunate. I had a big conversation with my husband, and he was like, "But why don't you do what you like? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the big deal?" And
Amazing.
yeah, there's always this question of like, "Oh, but I won't make the same amount of money," and la
Yeah.
la la. And he was like, "But who cares? We're together, and I support you, and you supported me for so long because obviously he has a very busy career, and at the time that we had kids, he was very much absent, and I think he felt like, okay, this is your turn. You
Mm-hmm.
just do what you want to do, and if it doesn't make money, it's fine." And I think I really felt like, okay, then I don't mind not making money and just doing what I
I
like.
remember those
And
conversations.
yeah. And then I pursued. It was a bit. I wanted to be maybe a dietitian or something a bit more formal. But living in Dubai, it's very difficult to get access to high quality education that I could pursue. Knowing also that my previous degrees just don't count in the wellness industry. So I ended up actually reaching out to Chris Sandel, which I worked with,
Mm-hmm.
and asking him if he knew good coach trainings. And I ended up training myself at the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. So they really look at eating challenges and body image challenges and really putting in perspective with the psychology of things. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a psychologist. I don't claim to be one, but I can definitely support women in this work of recovery. And I've done a lot of work, to train myself and to learn new things. And I keep training myself, which I think is really the key. And just to finish the story, I mean, we ended up meeting in Rio,
Yes.
right? And that's still a beautiful, beautiful memory of mine. And at the time, I was still in coach training, actually.
Yeah.
So that was before I started my own business. It was 2 years ago, I think, right? I went all the way to Chicago and met you and all other women from the former Fertile Thoughts board or the Facebook group. And I think at that time we really came together and thought, there's something there, right? There's
Yes. Yep.
something we could benefit. Women could benefit from working with both of us at the same time. So having the physical input and the scientific input and the answers to the questions and the diagnosis, that is really something that is totally in your hands. But then really taking them by the hand and supporting them when they are scared or getting over the roadblocks and helping them mentally and developing healthy ways to deal with anxiety about their body or about anything else. This is more my part.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think it's what works is that we are both so passionate about it. I don't think we really do it because we see the beauty of recovery and seeing those women regain their life and their freedom. For me, it's just every time somebody texts me that they had their period, I just jump in
I
the air and I'm like, yay, and I'm like, what happened and how, when and how, and okay, now how are we going to track the next ovulation? And I think it's just, and it's such a shame that it's not taught even in schools. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like
yes.
we
Yes.
don't get this information. We had to learn it by ourselves. So I think for me, doing some of that awareness work also is really important. So I'm also a volunteer for a local eating disorder association here in the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's also how I keep learning. How I'm able to also redirect women if they come to me and they are quote unquote too sick for coaching. If they need more support, I'm able to redirect them to the right person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something, again, integrity is one of our values for both of us, right? And we would
Yeah.
never take on board someone that we don't think we can help. So I think we've probably gone full circle now. We're back to
Yes.
2020. And we're nearing an hour. So I think we should probably wrap it up.
Yes, and we look forward to some upcoming interviews. I think, as we mentioned, either in a mini episode or earlier, we will be talking to some of the admins from a Facebook group. So Cynthia Donovan, who is a dietitian, Shanta. Shannon Hadley, who's an anxiety coach. So I think we've got some really great people on board for helping
Yeah.
with the Facebook group, and I think so we'll share their stories coming up, as well as more about HA and lots of other details and nuggets that we will get into.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I'm so happy we've just finished episode 1. Woohoo!
Yay!
I feel like it was we
It's been a
dreamed
long
of this
time
for so
coming,
long.
yes.
Yes. And for some reason, we're always distracted by something else or unable to do it. So now we made a commitment that we're going to meet regularly and do this and record and edit and figure it out. So I'm really, really grateful that we're able to do this together. So thank you,
Yes.
Nicola.
Me
And
too.
and we will, don't forget to rate, review, and like and share this podcast. It will be necessary for us to keep growing and reaching out to more people that need this information. And we will speak to you soon on our next episode.
All right. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Maybe take a few minutes to reflect on it and how you have been all in this past week. It always strikes me how different each person's all-in journey is. As I often say, there are many paths to HA and many paths out of it. Your journey is unique.
That is so true. And if you need more support on your journey, you should definitely start with No Period Now What, which you can get at noperiod.info/book.
And Florence and I both work with people on different aspects of period recovery and so much more. So if you'd like more personal advice and attention, you can go to noperiod.info/appointments to schedule a time to speak with me on fixing the issues underlying your missing periods and figuring out what those issues are.
And I'm at beyondbodyimage.com to work with me on the deeper emotional issues and your body image. I also run a French Instagram account, amenoré_fr. And obviously you can find Nicola at No Period Now What on Instagram. We also have joint clients, so you can access both our domains of expertise at the same time. If you enjoyed this podcast and found it helpful, please drop us a review to help more people find it.
Also, join the No Period Now What recovery support group at noperiod.info/support and let us know how All In is going for you.
All In is not just about period recovery, it's about getting your life back. See you in 2 weeks.
You were lost in fat love till you got lost again. You were lost in fat love. Now find yourself and then take all that you've learned about what love and loss, pleasure and pain, and never get lost again.